You are in the Where's Huddle with me, Bram, and with me, per usual, my boy and producer, MT.
What's up, Dub Nation?
MT, Emergency Podcast. We don't always get to do this, although it feels like it's happening more and more frequently. But it's certainly justified today because Steph Curry is now the only human being in the history of the world to have hit 4,000 three pointers in an NBA game. 12,000 fucking points through threes alone. So it demanded a podcast from us, man. And I'll tell you what, let me start here. How do you view this as far as like individual milestones? Is this more important than something like an MVP? Is it less important? Like how do you rate this stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't want to say this before the mics went hot because this was the topic of the emergency pod, but it's a really random and innocuous and unimportant milestone, in my opinion. Happy to talk about it.
I mean, I'm not sure to either say more or say less because you're ruining our main topic here. But I mean, shit, you've sucked me in. It is what it is. While I try to look up another guest, tell me what you mean.
Like it's an amazing accomplishment. I mean, 12,000 points just from threes alone is crazy, but to me it's at a point in his career where it's obviously not going to stay at 4,000, and 4,000 wasn't like the number to beat. It wasn't like 3,999 was the current record. So, it's just like I don't know, it's just a random point mark. So, I think it's cool. It's an accomplishment. It's something that may not be beaten, but the way people shooting threes nowadays and the way Steph changed the game, who knows? Like 4,000 may be something that is attainable by a bunch of players coming up. But cool feat nonetheless. Obviously, because of Steph, it's that much cooler. But it's just a random number. It's not, like it will be gone very soon. At the next game, when he hits another three, it's like 4,000 isn't really an important number anymore.
Of the things that you were maybe going to tell me, and to be perfectly clear and transparent, MT and I did in fact have a discussion before we hit record. And during none of that did he give me any energy of no big deal. And that was not, this is a shock to me as much as it is to anybody who's listening. And credit to you that this is not going to be the final number. We're not going to look back and say, oh, he hit 4,000 on the nose. This is kind of one of those big round numbers that people tend to celebrate just because it's a big round number. But I'll tell you what, I think it's a big deal. And I'll go even further. I think it's a bigger deal than an MVP. But first, let me agree with you. Entering last night, I was going to watch the game. I was super excited for it. But the fact that he might hit the 4K plateau was a sidelight. I mean, I wanted to see it and like I was ready for it. I told my wife about it, but I was more excited about the streak they're on and who Jimmy Butler's made them and JK's return, like all those other things. And then he does it and we keep going on. And then at post game, we get a shot of his celebration and we get the conversation on the TNT set about whether or not he's now entered the conversation for greatest of all time. And this doesn't address this isn't going to be the final number. I get it, but looking at it just as a person, who accomplished something that has never happened before, right? By way of example, did a little research. In the past, there have been 68 MVPs awarded. From 1955 until last year, 68, almost 70 of these things have been handed out. 4,000 threes, never happened for anybody ever at any stage. Also, I'm not ready to concede that it might or probably will be beaten. As of right now, there's nobody close to him. The next person down is James Harden, and it's like 800 or 900 threes away. So it did feel like a very large deal to me, probably because of the way it was covered, and because of how much he celebrated. So I don't know. Did I talk you into it at all? Maybe not like bigger than MVP. Does that make it feel more important?
Not a little, but I mean, then why not celebrate 3,500? Nobody's done that.
Yeah.
Like I get it. It's because it's, like 4,000 is the next, it's a four handle now. So that's cool. But I don't know. I think the fact when he broke Ray Allen's record, they stopped the game. he and Reggie Miller and Ray Allen came out. His dad hugged him on the court. His mom came, like it was a whole thing.
Yep.
When he did this one, he told him, "Do not stop the game." We were on the huddle, and Steve Kerr was just like, "Yeah," and he gave the look like, "Oh,
Yep.
that's right." Like, give him that shout out. And Steph Curry did it, and then they celebrated after. So I think that's indicative and emblematic of what it means to him too. Like it's a cool thing, and they celebrated appropriately after, but it wasn't big enough to stop the game.
Yeah. I mean, here, I'll change it or alter it slightly. Yeah. So, does the fact that he is the most prolific 3-point shooter of all time, including now 4,000 and whatever the big number is next, vault him into the greatest of all time conversation? Don't answer that yet. All right. I've got a few follow ups on that. Before we do, and we get too far away, I pulled a story that surfaced today about the post game celebration. So there's videos of Steph going into the locker room and they soak him with water, which feels to be like kind of a new thing. I don't remember the water celebration during the regular season in seasons past. So that was clearly a big deal. But celebration doesn't stop there for good reason. Steph was celebrating a birthday. And last night, apparently, he and the rest of the team went out. And here's Shams on the Pat McAfee show describing that celebration.
Here's a good story for you guys. So Stephen Curry, he had a birthday party.
Oh, I like good
weekend.
stories.
The entire team was there, from what I'm told, and the party went pretty late into the night. 2, 3 a.m.
What?
The last 3 people there. Can you guys guess who those people were?
Steph,
Stephen
Draymond,
Curry,
Jimmy Butler.
Draymond and Jimmy Butler.
Holy
and
shit.
Good guess.
spending time.
Holy
they're vibing.
shit.
They're talking. They're
Where's
getting
Steve?
their camaraderie. They're playing cards to end the night, and I think you're seeing how that looks right on the floor. You're seeing these guys smiling. You're seeing them laughing. You're seeing them really come together as a group, and it's translated onto the court. And what word did Jimmy Butler use when he was trying to get out of Miami? He's using the word joy. I think his joy is back now in Golden State. And I think the Warriors are playing like they thoroughly love each other. So when I look at the West, Oklahoma City, definite contender for a championship. The Denver Nuggets, definite contender for a championship. You look at that standing. I think Memphis, you have to put them in there. What can they do? What do they look like with a fully healthy Ja Morant going into this playoff run? The Lakers, before their recent injury run, they were up there as well. And now you have to put Golden State into that mix. I think this team is serious. I think they're legit. I think they have a real chance to make a deep run in this playoffs. Here's a good story.
Few things stick out to me there. Thing number one, why the hell is Pat McAfee screaming, "I like good stories" out of nowhere? And how did Shams keep his cool as the rest of that cast just fires off random non sequiturs while he's trying to tell a dope ass story? Thing number two, Shams saw the 4K, saw the celebration. He's saying we're a definite contender in the West. So fuck yourself, Marcus. It was a big deal to him. For sure. For sure.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not sure. I mean, maybe Pat McCaffrey just is used to terrible stories. Like somebody's so juiced. I love good stories. Like I don't know. Like I love bad stories. You've never heard anybody say that, but
Dan started up by saying, "I have a story," and Pat was like, "Fuck, another bad
Yeah.
story." It's like, "I have a good story." Yes, dude. Like, hello, let's go. Fire it
Yeah.
off right now.
Exactly. And then I would have loved if Shams just would have said when he was like, "Who's at the table playing cards?" And it's like Draymond and Jimmy Butler. It's like, yes, you're right. It's like, no, it was actually Stackhouse and the trainer Celebrini. It's like,
It also hit me like, if I'm telling you a story or a joke, and I'm doing a good enough job where the punchline or the end of the story becomes clear, you know what I don't need you to do? Tell me. It's my goddamn story. Just let me get there. I'm very clearly, this is a runway going to there. Let me go ahead and tell you it is Steph, Jimmy, and Draymond. A random follow-up. But what's the biggest personal celebration you've had? Some evening you went out or, something that sticks out.
I think graduating from grad school, it was, like a big enough accomplishment just because you made it. But I was fortunate enough to be able to graduate the same weekend as my younger brother, and he was graduating from a graduate program as well the following day. So the Saturday and Sunday we had celebrations, and we had about 30, 40 people fly in to to the city where we went, and I just remember in my celebration, my graduation was a smaller one. It was a smaller program. There was like 20 people in my cohort, and everybody's in the audience, and there's like 30 deep probably in there of just people from my side and my family and friends. And they tell everybody, okay, when we say the graduate's name, don't clap until the end because we have 20 and we need to get through them all. And when they got up and I was lined up and I looked over and I just saw my brother and a bunch of my friends, and I looked and they just gave me the look, and I was like, oh, they're definitely not going to follow that rule. And they said my name and they all stood up and just were riding. And it was a great feeling because it was so loud and so just like they didn't care at all that even the administration, all the professors and teachers were laughing along with it.
I don't mind telling you that your answer is way more mature and thought out than mine is. And here, I'll include this. I've graduated from graduate school. I did exactly that. I walked across the stage. And unfortunately, when they gave that same kind of precursor, like, oh, don't go crazy to the end, my family listened. I could not distinguish them from the other 20,000 people or whoever the hell it was in the audience clapping. So maybe that's not why it's not number one. My number one is like, way stupider. It's celebrating either the Warriors' first championship in 2015, although that was punctuated by me breaking my toe. So, like, not really as celebratory as it could have been, which leaves, I think it was 2012. I'm bad with baseball, but I celebrated a Giants championship, and we were watching it in a bar off of Polk Street with a bunch of friends, close friends who actually care more about baseball than I do. I like the Giants, but it falls behind my love for basketball. But I got swept up in it. You know, they win the championship. We sweep into Polk Street. Now all the businesses have gone out there. They've shut down the streets, so people are going up and down. And someone had bought 4 or 5 40s, and we were using the 40s the way that the team would use champagne. We were like spraying it all over each other. So for a 90-second clip, best celebration I've ever been a part of. For the remainder of the evening, I smelled my malt liquor. I had to take Bart home. It was a nightmare. But that little section there was pretty solid. So probably my best celebration.
Nice. Did you break your toe on the BART ride home at all?
No toe breaking on the BART ride home. To a little clarity there, I don't remember. I can't tell you the exact play, but I can tell you that in the clinching game, Steph hit a 3 that made it clear. You know, he had not invented the night-night celebration yet, but had he, we would have had the night-night celebration after that shot. And I was super tense. I was sitting down. He hits it. And to celebrate it, I stand up, turn, and try to run down my hallway. And in the process, with my left foot, kick the bench I was sitting on, and boom, hit the toe. And like, definitely broken. Fortunately enough, alcohol was involved, so I was able to continue to celebrate through the night. Another unnecessary personal memory that next day, go to a podiatrist. They take an x-ray and they tell me, all right, it's going to take a minute. Doctor's busy, whatever it is. So they put the x-ray up on the wall, and then I'm waiting in there for 20 minutes. Didn't need the doctor's care. You could see that x-ray and the toe was like perpendicular off to the side. People came in to tell me it was broken. I was like, yes, dude, I know. I'm going to go ahead. I don't need your medical expertise on this. Like, what's the treatment?
Exactly. Oh man, that's terrible. Yeah, I've broken 2 of my little toes on a foot before, but playing Nerf basketball with my brother, chasing him around and kicked the little leg of a couch and just crumpled to the ground. And he pointed at me and started laughing. I'm hopping after him, like trying to get him. And there is few things that are more painful than hurting that little toe. So I assume once the alcohol wore off that you were like, oh my goodness.
Yeah, I mean, I'll throw in hearing that other people's families celebrated the hell out of their graduate school walking the stage thing. That was kind of painful for me. And I happen to know that story about Nerf basketball happened when you were like 28. So I appreciate you sharing it now. And that's dope. All right. Back to Steph, man. Okay. So whether or not you are fired up for the 4,000 number, it's another career accolade. It's a giant thing that's going to appear on his Hall of Fame plaque. Like these things, the most threes of all time, the most threes in a game. In fact, I got a list of the accolades, but they are going bigger and bigger, that list is. And so now we're starting to hear, should Steph be a part of the greatest of all time conversation? A little bit different than should he be considered the GOAT? This is kind of like putting a movie in the nominating it for Best Picture as opposed to actually handing it the award, right? So the question I have for you is, should he be nominated? As we have this conversation and we're coming up with the people who should be considered, should Steph Curry be involved? Before you give me your answer, let me play you a few quotes that will hopefully influence you. Here is Greg Anthony after, or actually during the game in New York where Steph went crazy at Madison Square Garden.
States up by 12 on the Knicks. You know, a lot of discussion about who's the face of the league and where guys rank all time. Partner, I gotta tell you, I don't know if there's ever been a guard, and this is with all due respect to the greats who played it, but I don't know there's ever been a guard that has impacted this game the way Steph Curry does. I mean, it is mind-boggling. It's literally intimidating what he does to opposing defenses.
Mind-boggling, literally intimidating what he does to opposing defenses. Let me give another quote. Here's Draymond Green on his podcast talking to Baron Davis.
Shaq was saying I demand fans to start putting Steph in the GO conversation.
He 100% is in that conversation. When you talk about what he does on the basketball court, with all due respect to LeBron James, with all due respect to Michael Jordan, there's no one in the history of the NBA that has been schemed against and guarded the way Steph Curry is guarded. I've played in the NBA Finals against the Cleveland Cavaliers and got wide open layups, dunks in transition because he's running on the wing and they'd rather go run and take the three away from him on the wing and give me a dunk. Still to this day, he's in year 16. Teams still throw 3 and 4 defenders at him on the given possession. Everything is designed to try to take this guy away.
For sure.
The way the game of basketball is played is because of Steph Curry. You tell me the game of basketball is modeled after how you played. You were so special at that. Everybody thought that, yo, that's what we need to do. And you telling me that guy don't go in the GO conversation?
You can look at multiple.
There's Draymond. And by the way, what he was talking about there in the finals, that they were so concerned with Steph, they were giving him wide open dunks. We saw a little bit of last night when they were playing Sacramento. They were so hell-bent on face guarding Curry on every possession, they were giving layups up left and right throughout the game, and they continued face guarding him. They realized that they were bleeding easy shots, and they're still like, nope, we are too afraid. But we're leading up to the person who basically started this conversational topic. Here's Shaquille O'Neal, who has been nothing but a very aggressive supporter of Steph Curry throughout. In fact, was that last night to Charles Barkley. But here is Shaq about a week ago on TNT's broadcast.
Look, in that first half, every single player on the Warriors was a negative plus minus except Steph was a 0. And then we saw what happened the third quarter +9, fourth quarter +11.
As the supreme leader of the Big Man Alliance, I demand you fans to start putting Steph Curry in that greatest of all time conversation. Just start putting them in the conversation.
So the conversation of
there's
Jordan,
Mike,
LeBron, Kobe.
LeBron, start putting Steph in that conversation. I demand it.
Why does the Big Man Alliance need to say something?
Because I am the supreme leader and my voice counts. And I'm saying, listen, I played against Mike, played with Kobe, played against and with LeBron. They're all great. But at some point, we're going to have to put Steph Curry in that category.
There you go, MT. I'm a little nervous now. I mean, when I first asked you, do you think this is a big deal? I was ready for like this laundry list of reasons about why. Not, yeah, cool, but who cares? So you've got my attention. What do you think, dude? Does he deserve to be a part of this conversation?
Well, after 4,000 3-pointers. No.
Appreciate you saying that. Exactly right.
Yeah, I do think he belongs in the conversation. I think there's some caveats you have to have. It's how many people are you putting in the conversation? Like, typically it's like, oh, is it Jordan or LeBron or Kobe? Like, if you're willing to expand it and say, of the short list, if there's 5, then I think he has earned his place to be in that conversation. To Shaq's point, I think with another championship, with a 5th ring that matches Kobe's and is one shy of Jordan and matches bronze, I think that's the final piece, because he will have done 2 rings with KD, 3 without, And at his age and all the records he's setting from, the 3-point marks and et cetera, and then how he changed the game, I think that's the final piece. I think with 4 rings, he's earned the conversation, but it's hard for him to leapfrog people, even be having an argument saying, well, he's not even better than Magic Johnson. He's not the best point guard. So how is he the greatest ever?
Would you say that's the final piece? Final piece for what? Final piece as in he's close to the conversation, but don't put him in it. We need that 5th before we can put him in that top 5. Or he's in the conversation, but he gets number 5. Now we're talking about he might actually receive the vote for greatest of all time.
Yeah, the latter. I think he's in the conversation now. I agree with Shaq and the other people that you put the comments on. I think the conversation is longer, and he's in the conversation for a longer amount of time.
Yep.
In the debate with a 5th ring. And does he pass Jordan? I don't know. It's hard just because we grew up with Jordan, so there's a different level of air and mystique around him. But I don't know. Steph is close. I think with the 5th ring, he jumps ahead of LeBron and Kobe in my mind pretty easily, and then you're just debating between him and Mike.
When he wins the 5th ring, do I think he's a part of the conversation right now? Of course I do. So let's see. I tried to think about this before we hit record, and I wanted to break down what goes into it. When you're talking about greatest of all time, what are the factors that you need to consider? So I was thinking regular season winning. Check. 73 wins. He's got the most successful regular season team of all time. 2 MVPs, the only unanimous MVP in the history of the league. So check. Postseason success. Again, check. So he doesn't have the 5th, but he's got 4, and he's got a finals MVP. The winning that he has done is unassailable, which then goes to historic impact. Again, check. The amount of historical records this gentleman has set with 3-pointers, and it's ongoing, is bananas. Here, he holds the record for career threes with 4,000. He holds the record for playoff threes with 618. He holds the record for threes in an NBA Finals with 152. He holds the record for career 3-point hits per game at 4. He holds the records for 3 in a season at 402. He holds the record for seasons with 300 plus threes at 5. He holds the record for seasons with 200 plus threes at 12. He's got the most threes in an NBA Finals game at 9, on and on and on. All these things that no one else has ever done. So historical impact, we have that too, which leaves the thing that you just kind of mentioned, like the amorphous thing, the real hard to define deal, mystique, right? And so generally speaking, at least in my opinion, when we're talking about mystique, we're talking about someone who is either physically or mentally dominant, kind of assholes. We look back on Jordan, and the thing that separates him beyond the regular season success, beyond the postseason success, beyond the historical impact is, push came to shove, he'd rip your face off before he lost to you, and that's what's kind of elevated him up. LeBron is a different portion of that, physical dominance. He has been able to carry this through till the age of 40. He looks like a Mack truck. When you think of him, he makes opposing defenses afraid of his body. If opposing defenses were afraid of Jordan's mind, they're afraid of LeBron's body and their ultimate impact. But does Steph have this kind of mystique? I think absolutely. Doesn't have a dominating personality. It's not who he is. Doesn't have a dominating body. It's not who he is. In fact, he's known for joy, and being one of the nicest people of all time. But I don't think that's a downside. If you spoke to a player who was going to play Steph in a playoff game before the game, they wouldn't necessarily tell you how terrified they were of him. They wouldn't necessarily tell you that they were worried about his will to win or how big he is. But if you watched what happened during the game, the defense would be just as concerned with him as they were with Jordan, as they were with LeBron, as they were with anyone who has ever played. We just heard Draymond say dunks. Unguarded dunks, because the rest of the defense was so worried. If that's not mystique, I don't know what the fuck is. So I'm not ready to say, yeah, let's crown him. Like you said, Jordan was a superhero for me. My age when I was rooting for him, it wasn't basketball analysis. It's like watching Superman do something. But I think Steph has now joined, he receives my nomination, and he's still got some time to work on this to see where it ultimately goes.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I think another thing that is in the plus category for Steph is when you talk about the other players, you have to ask how many of them had like truly legitimate Hall of Famers on the team with them. Like you compare Steph and Magic, and a lot of people say Steph isn't at Magic's level yet, and it's like, yeah, he's close. If that fifth ring is the thing that gets them to really have the conversation. It's like Magic had Kareem and Worthy, like both people on the 75 team, 75th anniversary team. Steph didn't for two of those. He had KD for two of them, but he didn't have him for the other two. And like Draymond and Clay weren't on that team. Clay was, famously trying to wear number 76 because he felt like he was the 76th choice. So, like Kobe had Shaq and Pau Gasol. Like Mike had Scotty and Rodman. So I, you have to look at those kind of things too. And I think it means more when Steph is carrying a team of players that aren't at that level, at the same level as the people he's in the GOAT conversation with. And he's still carrying them to championships and still has the gravity he does. And it's like, you're not sagging off of Kareem. It's like, okay, yeah, I'm not sagging off Kareem, but like you're willing to sag off of Draymond and he still is accomplishing all of this. Like that to me needs to be factored in.
Scottie Pippen was so good. He is the go-to example of the second best player. When we're talking about like who we want to add, who's going to be the Scottie Pippen, there's no question. Obviously top 75, but also his impact goes along with him being the example. LeBron, every time he didn't have, an incredible supporting cast, he left and he went and he got, a better surrounding series of players. For Steph, look just at the last title, man, in 22 when he was the final MVP. The second best player on that team, we've all decided, was Andrew Wiggins. I'm on board for two-way Wigs. I made a huge impact and I loved him that year. But we fast forward 10 years and no one's going to be like, who was a problem? Andrew fucking Wiggins. We're not being like, who's the Wiggins on that team? That's not going to happen. That's not a thing. And so you're right. That should separate them out here.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, who's the Wiggins is probably not going to be in the
unless you're asking who's the guy who's going to miss 40 games for reasons that we'll never understand. But no need to take shots at Wiggins. How many threes does Steph end up with? And I'll give you an over/under. They asked this to Kerr, and he jokingly said 8,000. I think it'll be beneath 8,000. And so I'll give you 4,800. He's at 4,000 now. If he just plays out his contract, hopefully it's further. But if he just plays out his contract, he's got 2 more years and then the remainder of this season. And he's probably good for about 400, per. So what do you think? Over, under?
He's just turned 37. I'm gonna go over. I think it'll mean something to him to get to 5,000.
Yeah.
I know that's gonna be pushing it, and like it'll require some good health and for Draymond and Jimmy Butler to still continue to be playing and give him support. But I could see 5,000 being a number that means something to Steph and his competitiveness. I could see him sticking around and trying to get to 5,000. So I'm going to go the over just slightly, and I'm going to go way under what Steve Kerr said with 8,000.
I'm already looking forward to saying, I don't really care when he hits 5,000. That'll be
exactly
super fun for all of us. When you say sticking around, so he finishes his contract, let's say he's at like 48-17 or something, some number that screams one more year. Do you think it'll be enough of a carrot at the end of the stick to, one more like symbolic year kind of deal?
I do, but I don't think that will be the only reason he'll do it. I think he's going to feel like he has a little left in the tank.
Yeah.
And he'll just want to keep playing. Who knows what this roster will look like then and what the NBA landscape will be, but I could see him signing a 1-and-1 deal and playing one more year and then deciding to hang it up after 3.
I've said many times in this mic and continue to hope that I'm wrong. I think he plays one season in Charlotte. So I used to be way more confident about that random guess. Now he's become so synonymous with like there's not many players who only play in one place that I don't know if you throw that away for 153 season and so you can play with your dad. Like I don't know if it goes down, but I guess we'll revisit this when his career is coming close to its final season. You and I will reassess. All right, I need your opinion on one last thing. And really, man, I got a bunch of people who's upset at me. They're saying that I fucked up this social situation, so I want to run it by you. You tell me if I screwed up because I'm positive I didn't. I think they're being ridiculous, but I need someone else's take. All right, so
I haven't heard it yet, but yes, you screwed it up. But
I mean, you have completely thrown your opinion away in the first 8 seconds of this show. Nobody cares what you have to say, but I've already told you I'm gonna elicit it. So here's the story. Background. My wife's, and they're all of our friends, but my wife has a series of friends that she has known since high school for decades. And so we don't see them as often as we used to. Life, kids, all these things get in the way, but we see them on a pretty regular basis. And when we do, it's the same group. It's the usual suspects, man. It's always the same guys over and over again. And it happens once a month, once every couple of months, something like that. And we've got one coming up in a couple of weeks. We're set to go to a winery with her friend group. That's what she told me. We're set for wine. They didn't give me any specifics. Now, about 5-6 days ago, my wife and I are at a jamboree. My kid's playing in it. We got to kill time. She's got a game at 2, then another game at 5, which means 3 pain in the ass hours walking around Berkeley High. And during those 3 hours, we run in to members of her friend group, but we didn't expect to see them. And so, I mean, we know him well enough, but because it was a surprise run-in, the conversation we had got awkward fast. Like, oh, how you been? And then like, how you been again? Like there wasn't something else to talk about. So I thought I was doing everybody a favor and I throw out, oh, well, we got this winery thing coming up, dude. Like, are you guys looking forward to that? And then it got bananas awkward, hell of silent. And I know now, MT, that they were not invited. They even though they should always be a part, even though they're part of the thing that, this group who's always there. On this instance, apparently, the powers that be decided not to include them and did not tell them. And so they get upset. We leave. Erica's pissed off at me. How could you bring that up? And now her whole friend group, the people who are going to the winery, are very upset that I let the cat out of the bag, that these other guys weren't invited. I don't think it's my fault. If they didn't want me to bust out to the people who weren't coming that we were going, they should have told me the people who weren't coming. I thought I was helping out by bringing it up. I've tried to defend myself. No one's listening, so I'm giving it to you. What do you think, man? Excusable? Like no one told me, so fine. Or if I wasn't sure, should I have just not mentioned anything?
Well, I know I said that you were in the wrong, but
oh, let's go.
I'm on your side on this one.
Hey.
I do think there's a strong case to be made that you just shouldn't have said anything and you should always just play it safe. But in this instance, if it's awkward conversation and you're trying to fill the void, then, like that seems like a plausible and understandable thing to throw out, especially if they have been to a winery group outing before in the past.
Exactly.
Like if they had been there, if they weren't in there, then it's like, okay, you didn't connect those dots. But if they were there before and they're the friend group, then you can be like, yes, it's safe to assume they should have told you that they were not being invited and there's something else going on. But so I think you are in the clear in that one. But just a good CYA moving forward is just always talk about the weather and don't even get close to those kind of subjects.
Oh, we cover the weather already, unfortunately enough. I liked your response so much. I don't know what you're doing in a couple of weeks, but if you'd like to come to a winery, man, we got a whole bunch of extra space. Yeah, like right when the conversation went like, how are you doing? Get no traction there. Weather, no traction there. Awkward silence. Me busting out about the winery, and then me retreating to how you doing, even though we had already covered it. It's just like, oh my God. And we said something along the lines of like, oh, I think she's playing in that gym. And then just kind of ran away. And that's all she wrote. Good times.
Nice. Yeah. Woo. Sorry. I don't think you're getting out of that one anytime soon, but what's your fault?
Well, and if you notice that I just started laughing unnecessarily, it's because I remembered that other members of her friend group listen to this fucking podcast. So turns out I'm right back in it. Hooray. Actually, I made all of this up. There is no winery trip. So don't you worry about that. All right, man. Appreciate you. What a fun season, man. I mean, I don't know where this goes, but I can tell you that it has become appointment television again. The idea that, that it's Steph and Jimmy and Draymond partying until 2:30 in the morning. This feels like all the little bullet points that I associated with Warriors dominant runs of the past. It's like unselfishness and joy and, excellence. All of these things are coming together, but I won't jinx it. We'll let this thing roll out. With that in mind, you guys, go Warriors, and hopefully we'll see you real soon.